Thanksgiving is just around the corner, so it's time to figure out what I'm going to do for my cards this year. Hey friends, welcome back to my sewing room. My name is Becca, and in today's video, I want to talk to you about quilted postcards because these are the cards that I choose to send out for the holidays rather than store-bought cards. Now, don't get me wrong, store-bought cards are absolutely great, and for a number of years, that is exactly what we did. But as I started getting more into the sewing and quilting realm, I wanted to play with my scraps of fabric. And so now what we do is make a limited amount of holiday themed postcards, and we mail those out to our loved ones instead. I actually collect quilted postcards. This is just one of my buckets of postcards that have been sent to me. And if you would like to send one to me, I will gladly send one to you in exchange. All of my mailing address will be in the description box down below, so I'm happy to trade cards with you. But I feel like this is a very personalized touch. If you're going to get a handmade card in the mail, you're just going to treasure it and maybe even keep it a bit longer than you would have a store-bought card. So this allows me to be creative. It gives me some time to work in my sewing room, gives me a project to work on, and it makes the recipient feel a little bit more loved, maybe? Makes them feel a little bit more special. So that's why we send these out. In today's video, I'm going to give you an overview of how to make a quilted postcard from start to finish. But before I do, I just want to answer one of the questions that I always get from people when I'm talking about quilted postcards. Can you mail it just like you would a postcard? And the answer is yes. This is a 5x7 card, and I could fill out the back side of this, address it just like I would a postcard, throw a stamp on there, and just drop it in any mailbox, and it's going to get to its destination. I have received a number of postcards that were mailed that way, and I have mailed several of them myself that way, and it's usually just fine. Now, if you're hand making a postcard that put a lot of time and effort into it and you just want to give it a little bit more protection, you can absolutely put it in a poly mailer or a bubble mailer and drop it in the mail that way. And you can, of course, put some tracking on it if you want to watch it go all the way through the system, but you don't need to. This can be a project that uses up your scraps, allows you to be creative, and can be mailed to your friends and loved ones for just the cost of a forever stamp. All right, so let's get into the tutorial. Come with me to the overhead and I'm going to show you everything you need. Okay, so let's talk about the materials that we're going to need to make this postcard. But before we do, I want to let you know that this is a template that is available for free right now through December 25th, 2024 on my website. This is a pattern that I normally sell on my Etsy shop, and this happens to be one of the leftover cards that I made for last season. I'm gifting this to you if you haven't bought it already. The download will be linked in the description box down below. It is an FPP pattern though. I do want to let you know that you don't have to use this to make a postcard. You could just cut a piece of fabric and adhere it to your layers, or you could traditionally piece, whatever works for you. But this download is in the description box down below. So what are you going to need? Well, you're going to need some scrap fabric or some fabric to put your quilt top together. But in addition to that, you need a piece of cardstock to put on the back side of your postcard. I have a piece of paper that is 65-pound weight, I believe. You could use 60 or 80, whatever works for you. This is cut down to 5x7 inches. I have a piece of scrap batting. This is just a low loft batting that is cut down to 5x7 inches. And then I have a piece of Pellon. Now this is 72F, and we're going to talk about what that means. So the F in that number means that it is fusible. That means there's glue on this, and when you heat it up, it's going to hold on to whatever it's being glued to. The 2 means that it is fusible or has glue on 2 sides. So both sides of this piece of Pellon are fusible. So when I heat this up, it's going to adhere to both sides. Pellon does have another product that is very similar to this in weight. It is called 71F. And I actually have a bunch of that here. This is the exact same product with one exception. There is only glue on one side of this. So as you're working with the product, if you open it up, one side is going to feel a little bit more scratchy than the other. The other side will be a bit smoother. That scratchy side is where your glue dots are. So as you're working with this, if you couldn't get your hands on 7-2F, if you could only get 7-1F, you'll just want to make sure that you're putting the glue side against the paper. And I'm going to show you how to work with that as we get going. Before we jump back into this tutorial, I want to talk to you real quick about a product I got recently that has transformed my work routine. That is my Flexi Spot mesh chair. This is awesome. I have a dedicated computer setup outside of my sewing room for all of my behind the scenes work. This is where I spend hours replying to comments, drafting thumbnails, researching video topics, designing quilt patterns, and writing instructions. And having a chair that supports me through all of that has been a game changer. The mesh cushion cradles my body while providing just enough support that allows me to sit for long periods of time while still being productive and avoiding that nagging hip and leg pain that I think might be sciatica related. FlexiSpot also stands by the quality of their products with a 30-day risk-free trial and a 10-year warranty, which gives you the peace of mind that the product's going to be there for a while. And here's the best part. If you're interested in trying out this chair or exploring their ergonomic options, you can use my code in the description box down below to save yourself $50. If you're looking for a supportive and comfortable chair that allows you to be more productive for longer periods of time, I highly recommend this mesh chair. All of the information about how you can pick one up will be in the description box down below. Okay, let's get back to sewing. So for my fabric, I've just pulled some green, red, and white that I'm using for another project. And I'm just going to make a very simple strip set that I can use for my postcard. I'm going to line these up and cut off a chunk of fabric that I can work with. I'm making 2.5-inch strips. You do what works for you. Then I'm going to take these over to my sewing machine and I'm just going to sew it so that I have my red, my white, and then my green. Now that my strip set is all sewn together, while it does feel a bit Christmassy to me, it looks a bit like the Mexican flag. I mean, I can't be the only one that sees it. So at this point, I have a creative choice that I need to make. I can either just keep this the way it was, because my goal was just to cut out a 5x7 piece of this and put it on the postcard and call it done, or I can get a little bit more intricate. This is your creative opportunity. I think I'm going to try to turn this into a bit of a 9-patch type of scenario or something. So I'm going to speed through getting that piece together. This isn't a tutorial to tell you how to piece a block. This is to talk to you about how to make a postcard. So I'm going to let you be creative and do it the way you want to do, and I'll show you what I came up with in the end. So I changed it up a little bit, and I think it's going to work. I still have the white stripe going down the middle. I just cut little pieces and alternated whether it was red at the top or green at the top, just so I didn't have something that looked just like the Mexican flag. Still not sure if I absolutely love this, but it's going to still work as a postcard. So let's just keep moving through with the tutorial. I want to show you this postcard template that I got from So Be It Quilt. I'll link to this in the description box down below. This works out really well if you are traditionally piecing and not doing FPP for your postcards. This template is 5 by 7 inches and it was designed by my friend Ian, the Off-Kilter Crafter, and he has a wonderful video that I will also link to in the description box down below that talks all about why this postcard template is so great. For me, what I like about it is exactly 5 by 7 inches. So it's going to match up with the size of my pre-cut interfacing, batting, and cardstock. And I also have a little crosshair right here in the middle that lets me kind of pinpoint where I want the center of the fabric to be, or the quilt top, once it's all pieced together. Now, because this is a clear acrylic ruler, I can fussy cut this a little bit. So if I want the white to be the thick, most prominent piece of this, I can evenly place that little crosshair right in the middle. Or if I want it to be a little off kilter, which I think might be fun, we can just turn it this way. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn it a bit. And then I'm just going to come through with my rotary cutter. And just kind of clean up those sides. Ooh, I'm liking the way that looks already. Once you have your quilt top all pieced, then it's time to make your little postcard sandwich. Not with your cardstock. Your paper stays off. Everything else you're going to put together. So you're going to put your fabric, your batting, and your pellon. Now I'm using 7-2F, which means I have glue on both sides. But if you're using 7-1F, you want to make sure that the smooth part of this pellon is touching the batting and the bumpy, scratchy side is facing down. I've got all of my layers together, and I'm going to take this over to my sewing machine and quilt it. If you're working with 72F, you don't have to quilt it with the pellon here. You can quilt just with the fabric and the batting. But if you're working with that 7-1F, you don't have a choice. You have to quilt it with all 3 of those layers together. Remember, we're not doing anything with our cardstock just yet. So I'm going to take this over here and I'm going to get it quilted up. Now to quilt this, I'm just going to lightly quilt it. I'm going to use the edge of my presser foot to follow some of the seams in here. The whole goal of quilting this, for this one anyway, is just to make sure that all of the layers are secured together. You can see the quilting on this is just on either side of this line, just to hold the layers together. Once I have all of that done, then I'm going to bring my cardstock in and I'm going to put it on the back side of that pellon. The bumpy side should be touching that card now. And I'm going to bring it to a pressing surface. And I'm going to bring my iron and I'm just going to hit the cardstock with a hot, dry iron. I like to count to about 5 or 6, making sure that the heat stays on that section of the cardstock, and then I push it down a little bit more. And as I'm pushing the iron off, you can see I'm coming over with a clapper. That's basically allowing the layers to cool underneath a nice pressure so that the postcard stays relatively flat. And that's it. Once you've glued this side down, your last and final step is going to be to square this up. And I'm going to use this ruler just to clean up my edges a bit. Things like to shift around a little bit when you're quilting, so I had a little extra that I had to cut off. Once this is all glued together, your last step is going to put some sort of finishing touch around the edges. Now, for me, what I normally do is a zigzag stitch. So I'll take this to my sewing machine, and you can see on the back side here, if I hold this up a little bit closer, I'm just going with my default zigzag settings on my machine. I think this is like a 2.5 width and a 2.5 length. I'll put the measurements that I use in the description box down below, or they'll be up here on the screen for you. I'm going to go all the way around all four sides of this, and that's going to keep the layers nice and secure together. Now, I'm pointing out that you do want these to be spaced out a little bit, because trust me, if you do a really nice, beautiful, tightly stitched satin stitch, you know what's going to happen? You're going to perforate the paper on the back, and that cardstock's going to fall off. But here's a little tip for you. If you want that really beautiful satin edge around all four sides and you don't want to mess with paper, the back side of your postcard does not have to be cardstock. It could be a really pretty piece of fabric, as long as you have some sort of marking utensil to write the address on and your stamp will secure to it. Then again, if you're mailing this postcard in an envelope, then that doesn't matter either, because you're essentially making like a little mug rug that's just zigzagged around all four sides. The goal of that stitch around the four sides is to hold all four of these layers together so that you can put it in the mail and your loved one will get it all in one piece. So that's it. These postcards are really easy to make. They let you use up all of your scraps. They let you be creative, and they send a little piece of handmade love off in the mail to your loved ones. These make excellent cards anytime you want to wish someone well. Maybe they're having a baby, maybe they're getting married, maybe they have a birthday coming up, maybe they're celebrating something else and you want to celebrate with them. Consider making a little mini quilt and attaching it to some batting, pellon, and cardstock or white fabric on the back. Write off a handwritten message and just wait for them to call you and tell you how impressed they are with their lovely card that they got from you. Thank you, friends, so much for tuning into this tutorial. I hope this was helpful, and I hope you have a wonderful holiday season. Don't forget, if you want to send me a quilted postcard, I love getting these, and I keep a box of them ready so that I can address them and mail them out to anybody that sends one to me. I'd love to get one from you. Thank you, friends, for tuning into the video, and I'll see you guys all in the next video. Because trust me, if you do a really nice, beautiful, tightly stitched satin stitch, you know what's going to happen? You're going to perforate the paper on the back, and that cardstock's going to fall off. But here's a little tip for you. If you want that really beautiful satin edge around all four sides and you don't want to mess with paper, the back side of your postcard does not have to be cardstock. It could be a really pretty piece of fabric, as long as you have some sort of marking utensil to write the address on and your stamp will secure to it. Then again, if you're mailing this postcard in an envelope, then that doesn't matter either, because you're essentially making like a little mug rug that's just zigzagged around all four sides. Oh yeah, and by the way, I want to let you know that if you're working on a straight stitch machine like I am, I know a lot of you out there have Jukies. You don't have to pull out a machine that does a zigzag. You can just put some binding around all four of those edges, or if you're okay with it having some raw edges, you can increase your stitch length and just do a straight stitch around all four sides. Remember, the goal of putting that finishing stitch on here isn't to do anything more than to hold the layers together, especially the cardstock, because the only thing holding this is the glue from the pellon. What did you guys think? The postcards are really easy, right? I love making these. I keep a stack of them on hand so I can drop them in the mail at a moment's notice. And usually around this time of the year, I start trying to make a batch of Christmas or holiday themed quilted postcards so that as I'm getting cards throughout the season, I can just pull one out, address it, throw a stamp on it, and my loved one will get a piece of handmade celebratory goodness that they can treasure and keep for as long as they choose. Getting something handmade in the mail is always better than getting something store-bought, right? And it lets me use up my scraps. So win-win for me. Thank you, friends, so much for tuning into the tutorial. If you liked what you saw here, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel down below, and I'll see you guys all in the next video. Bye!